Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. It has been a minute, as they say. I've kind of been in this wilderness wandering a little bit, haven't recorded as much, but y'all, hold on to your hearts because I have an amazing guest with me today. His name is Joel McKerrow, and we're going to go back and forth in this conversation. Before we get into like the main reason that he's on here, as far as the Enneagram community goes, I want to just let him introduce himself and share a little bit about his amazing work and his story. So Joel, hey.
Hello, it is wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me onto the podcast.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so my name's Joel, for those who haven't picked the accent quite yet. I'm an Aussie. So I'm live over here in Australia, but I do get to travel to the US when we're not in COVID times.
Yeah.
I travel through and I tour through a lot. I am a poet and a writer and a speaker. A performance poet is kind of what I'm most known for. But I kind of dabble in lots and lots of different creativity. Creativity's kind of become my obsession, my absolute love, especially anything around kind of storytelling and whatever that might be. And so I use poetry and fiction and nonfiction and painting and drawings and anything that I can do to kind of, I think, creativity allows us to, similar in some ways to Enneagram. I think if Enneagram kind of takes us beneath the surface of someone's life and helps us to reflect on what's happening in our inner lives, I think creativity kind of does exactly the same. It bypasses our kind of cognitive, rational, very productive way of living our lives so often and gets to the heart of things. So all my creativity is kind of about getting to the heart of things. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, you definitely get to the heart of things. And
Thank you.
we're going to talk about that in a minute because I am not what you would call a very, emotional person. I'm a type 7.
Yeah.
And yes, type 7s can be emotional, but there's some areas of emotional depth that we don't typically go to.
Yeah.
Certain songs.
Same as a 3. I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, so I understand that.
Okay, all right. So but I found your work, and of course, as most of us do, we go right to our type. And again, we're going to talk about this series that you did through poetry with each of the Enneagram types. I'm going to do that in a minute. But when I first listened to the 7A, your voice, your ability to just, oh my gosh, move audiences, I'm sure, with not just the words, but the heart. You've tapped into that heart. And when I listened to the type 7, I was in tears.
Oh,
I mean, not
wow.
like sobbing, but especially the line that said, don't run so fast that you lose yourself.
That you leave yourself behind.
Don't run so fast that you leave yourself behind.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, this guy definitely has a grasp on the Enneagram. So, I wanted to see everything I could on your website, and I read your bio. I watched your videos of some, it's one of those things that you do so much.
I do a lot, yes. Too much. Hence why I'm a 3 on the Enneagram.
Well, you are the shining 3, as it is. Charity work with your your workshops that you teach for creativity and creative writing, and the work you do with what you call emerging adults. We could just spend the whole time just talking about what do you do. But I'm just going to read this part because I wanted to make sure I said exactly what it said from your bio on your website. And then I'm going to ask you to explain yourself.
Sure, yeah, no worries.
It says, his speaking focuses on creativity and how it can be used to change the self, society, and organizations, identity formation, and self-understanding, as well as spirituality and worldview formation. And then it also cites that your 17 years of in-depth work study focused on emerging adults, I love that, the youth, and their identity, self-understanding, worldview, and vocational formation. So what was this 17-year journey?
What does that look like?
What is
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
about?
So I for many years ago, I began to get into kind of the youth work, and way back then it was kind of youth ministry within churches and things like that. But I quickly started to I think recognize some of the deeper realities that were happening for teenagers. And then I started working with young adults as well, and seeing that kind of that trend, especially in that transition movement of coming from high school into university life, college life in the States, whatever it looks like. And just recognizing that so much, that so many of them had not done kind of any of that. I mean, they've done some probably, but not much of that inner formational work that was so needed and crucial. I mean, even so, I at that time I started running a year-long kind of. It was a year they were people going into youth work. And so they would come and we'd have about 50 people a year, and kind of, it was a year based around identity formation. So going through various things to understand themselves, and spiritual formation, various frameworks and ideas, things like the Enneagram, to kind of understand their own spirituality and the journey that they were on. And one of the things I remember we'd get them to do from the very start would be to share their story in a small group, kind of their entire story, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And it would surprise me, but it shouldn't have each year. It would just make me so sad that I reckon 90% of those students had never had a space in their life where they felt safe enough to be able to share their entire story, to really go into the inner depths of who they have become through the things that have happened to them, and the narratives, the stories that they tell about those things that have happened to them. And so it kind of became my obsession. How do I journey on alongside these young people? Emerging adults is kind of one of the names that we call them over here. How do I help them to go on that inner journey to live more of a holistic and integral life, rather than just kind of doing the stuff to get the career, to get the house, to get the et cetera. And so my studies became into that. I did a bachelor, I did a psychology degree, and then a theology degree, and then a master's that was totally focused around all of those ideas around identity and narrative frameworks, and how we develop our worldviews and the people that we are in life. So that's around where Enneagram kind of came in. Is Enneagram became that key tool that we used within that course. One of the key tools for those young people to understand their inner lives and compulsions. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, I mean, the Enneagram is worldwide, but I think we have this thing over here in the States that it's like, oh yeah, this is us. And
yeah,
I mean, I know that's not really true, but to see it, because I've connected with a group over in Cairo, Egypt recently, and to
oh wow,
hear this is the same. We are the same.
yeah,
We have, and then so the young adults, as you call them, that age, I know it's the same here. We're so focused on curriculum, get your grades right, get ready to go to your university, get your degree, and then and it's, of course, they build up that defense, and they build up that narrative, as you talk about, because that's all they've been told. The language that you are introducing to them is not what was familiar certainly when I was younger. And in fact, if you had said, we're going to talk about inner work and maybe talk about some psychology, it'd be like, oh, what? Wait, there's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
And to hear that you're working with this age range and letting them know early on, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. And because that's a truth, then we're going to be free to say, instead of going in when you're 50 and trying to take that shell off, you're helping them already realize you don't have to build this huge defense around your heart so early.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, totally. And what's been beautiful for me as well is seeing, so I no longer run that course. Maybe around 12 years ago, poetry started taking over my life. And then, and so for the last decade, I've kind of been a full-time poet, but what I realized was actually in the poetry stuff that I do. So I go into schools and I go into colleges, and now, essentially I'm doing the same thing, but I'm using poetry and storytelling as the lenses through which we look within to help us. And so it kind of, I'm doing the same identity work, but creativity and story writing and poetry writing just beautifully helps people explore I think in some ways an even deeper way than I used to do within the course. So it's been a wonderful exploration for me. Yeah.
Well, because you're still growing and you're still,
Yeah.
you're not that old. I don't know how old you think you are, but you're a pretty young guy. So
almost 40.
Oh, bless your heart. No, but oh my gosh, I know if we can get children to first verbalize before they can write, but I know this, I have grandchildren now, and to get them to write down, just write that. And what comes out of their imagination and their little souls helps you. All right, it helps us as parents and people who are now on a different path of speaking this language of self-awareness and identity, and not trying to box these children into, one size fits all classroom. You can begin to see these little hearts emerge, and it's like, well, this one kind of speaks this language. And that's what I love about the Enneagram. It's not at all to type anybody. That's against the rules. But to type your children, you're not to do that. But early, you can begin to understand they speak a language that comes from this part of their being, and this
Absolutely.
one more from the headspace or the heart space.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and so have just come out of toddler land, which is wonderful to be out of that now. But especially now, seeing them develop their own personalities is such a wonderful thing, and and as you said, it's not good to type. Especially young kids like that, but you can really see whether you're typing them or not. You start to see, I see that fear in you when you engage with that. When we do creativity, that negative voice already comes up in my little 5-year-old girl, and it both breaks my heart, but it's also like, I can speak into that and help her to challenge that negative voice from a 5-year-old. That's going to set her up for life.
Oh my gosh, you are just such a gift. This is just such my heart's desire, is to see your generation embrace this and say, yes, I'm going to understand that my children are not alike, right?
Yeah.
They're mini me's. Well, they are not.
Yeah, that's right.
They are not.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me kind of move forward a little bit, because I could talk about this all night long, because it's just such important work. And thank you so much for using your talent to share. But we're going to talk about the project that you and I connected on. Is, it's your project called Human.
Yeah.
And what's I find so interesting about this is that you use animals.
Yes.
Right?
To talk about humans. That's right. Yeah.
Humans. So I was going to read this explanation, or this, I guess it is a poem about that you have on the website, introducing Human, this project of yours. But I was like, I think I would rather the poet himself read this. So do you mind?
I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. I can read that for you. Here it is. this is the introduction. You can see it at joelmckerrow.com/human. It says this: to be human is to live in tension with oneself. It's the way we want to be fully known and the fear that stops us. It's the ache of our longing and the hope of our finding. It's the pain of our sorrow and the joy of our love. It is the dark that hides and the light that reveals. It's the despair and it is the beauty. This inner conflict, or perhaps truer to say, this inner confluence, is where the wellspring of what impels us overflows into our everyday realities. So ask the animals. They know.
I'm telling you, that is the choosing to use the word confluence was like, oh my gosh, what a conflict and confluence.
Yeah. Because I think that's one of the major learnings, isn't it? That these things that we have so often seen as conflictual inside us, the things that seem to war against each other, actually, I think that if we can see them in the right way, we can see them transformed and realize that they are a confluence, that we can hold both the light and the shadow of our lives together. The wonderful as a three, the wonderful empathy and compassion and what's seeking to change this world that I have, to recognize and name that's also coming out of that inner need to be seen, and to that inner ego that comes out and says, oh, look at me, I'm changing the world, I'm bettering humanity, look at me. I think if we can recognize that both of those things, those desires, those inner realities are sitting within us, then it helps us to be able to live healthily, to hold these two things, to swim in that confluence, allows us to walk in the healthy parts of those realities, rather than seeing that unhealth play out in our relationships, etc., etc.
Absolutely. I often say, I have learned to say this because I've walked many, many miles at this point in my life. And I like to say the problem becomes the solution. And until you go through enough of that, until you are able to see this dreadful thing that seems to just have ruined my life, actually, if you take that, it can become your saving grace, the solution to what you thought was preventing you from. And that's what I think you're saying inside. It's that tension that we hold inside of ourselves. It's that part of us that we look at and go, oh, this is where we suffer. This is bad. Let me, just focus on that, and then forget there's a side of that needs that. We need that to
totally. Yeah. And I think, again, as a creative with creativity, for me, creativity is about holding together what I would call the aching pain and the delicious hope, and refusing to let go of either. And I think some of us we get addicted to the aching pain, and we end up kind of victims and always the world being against us. And some of us choose to ignore all of that, and we get addicted to the delicious hope, and we live in kind of ignorance to the reality of everything that's happening. And so I think both as like my creativity, but also my life, what I'm trying to frame my life around is holding those two realities together, and sitting with the aching pain and delicious hope, and growing out of those two energies, those two desires coming out.
I kind of wish you hadn't said your type in the beginning. It's okay.
Oh, really?
It's actually
sorry about that.
No, because what I think is most people, if they were just listening to this without knowing, they'd be like, oh, well, he's a 4, right?
Yeah.
Because only 4s can reach that creative part of their soul. Well, I love hearing this, and see that's the message. No, we all have this inside of us. Don't cut yourself short, or don't give yourself excuses for saying, well, that's not my, I'm not creative.
Yeah.
I bet you've worked with of course you have. You're working with the whole classrooms.
Totally. Yeah. And one of if I could even give something now for your listeners to prove that they are creative. Here's a little challenge for you listeners.
Okay.
This is something that I do in my classes because I think it's something that, is really helpful. It basically, within poetry, obviously we use a lot of imagery, and part of the self-reflective process and the creative process, I think, is to use imagery as a lens, symbolism as a lens to reflect on our lives. And so if you, in a second, you can pause this podcast and then keep on listening, listeners. But if I want you to answer this question, maybe spend even like 2 pages of writing, spend the next 10 minutes and do what we call flow of conscious writing, which is where your pen starts writing and you're not allowed to stop, is the idea. So for 2 pages, you're not allowed to sit there and think about what you're writing and whether it's good or bad or right or wrong or anything like that. You just write. So my question for you to do this flow of conscious little creative task on, you didn't know you were going to get homework coming and listening to a podcast, did you? My question is this: maybe write the word I am, start with I am. And then my question is, if you were a landscape at the moment, what kind of landscape would you be? So landscapes, mountains, deserts, cities, oceans, valleys, churches, theaters, classrooms, alleyways, just a place, a setting. If you were a landscape, what kind of landscape would you be? Just spend 10 minutes, pause and spend some time writing 2 pages, but don't let that pen stop, because it'll help you to get out of editing brain and just to let whatever wants to flow out. So go for it, and you'll come back and you'll realize that you are a creative person who can reflect on your inner life using creativity. Do it now.
Okay. And we're back. I hope people do that. I know
so.
I'm not going to take time right now because
No.
That'd be a long dead airspace. Of course, immediately I was like, "Oh, I'm gone. I was there. I'm at the."
Yeah.
I won't say where I was.
What was the first landscape that came into your mind for you?
The ocean. It's just
the ocean.
Home. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I did just get to spend 2 weeks at the Caribbean Ocean.
Right. So a very clear, blue, beautiful ocean as well.
But I grew up in South Texas, down by the Gulf of Mexico, which is not crystal blue. And every bit. The water. Just, I guess I'm a fish. I know it. Well, I'm not a big astrology person, but I do love that my what is it? Zodiac sign is the crab, because my birthday is July 10th. July 10th, if anybody needs to know. I love my birthday. Of course I do, on the 7th. But they have this tiny little crab. I used to think, a crab, that's kind of, but they have these tiny little crabs, and their hands look like pom-poms, and they just slid across the sand, and I was like, yes, I'll be that crab.
That's great. I love that.
Yes, I'd like you to write a poem about those little crabs. So sorry, we kind of went off track there.
We went a little off track. Back to human.
I know it. It's fun. Yeah. Tell me how you found the Enneagram.
So during that time of kind of the young adult development stuff that I was doing, a friend of mine, I think he was on a guy named Rowan that I was running the course with. I think he was the first one to kind of mention it, and I think it was probably right as when Richard Rohr started talking about it a lot, and so immediately kind of we got our hands on everything Enneagram and began to read it and listen to talks about it, etc., and it was incredible. Like, it was amazing to as so many people find the Enneagram, it was amazing to go, actually there's so much I am learning about myself through this framework that I just couldn't have learnt. Perhaps I could have learned in other ways, but it gave me such a beautiful framework to reflect on my life. And then what I recognized, and this is kind of where it kind of had developed then over the years, and this is where the human project kind of came out of. So one of my creative practices is that I write a poem for someone every week. Is kind of my creative discipline. That I give to someone. And so I've spent a lot of time kind of learning how to listen well to people's stories and listen beneath kind of the surface level of what someone is sharing. And then I'll just sit there and I'll write a poem for them in whatever way that might be, whatever time I might have to do that. And it was actually through looking, as I've been doing that, every single one, it was always like, I can see the kind of Enneagram that this person is possibly through the kind of reflecting on who they are and their story and trying to bring their story into poetry. And I'd been looking back through a bunch of that poetry last year during COVID, during lockdown, and started to really kind of piece that together. And so the project is actually... the project began as all these individual poems that I wrote for individual people that I was then able to take and kind of flesh out the heart of that Enneagram type. And so the human project is each Enneagram has a poem and a watercolor, a painting that goes with it of an animal. And it kind of I was trying to bring all these things together from the Enneagram, which began for me 10 years ago, well, longer than that, 15 years ago, to poetry that began for me 10 years ago, to my painting, which began only like 18 months ago.
Wow.
Yeah, all of it kind of came together to be, hopefully, and what it seems to be for people. I've had many people who've had similar response who have just been in tears as they've looked, and people who know the Enneagram, but I've also shaped it in a way that anyone can engage. And so I've had a number of people kind of look and listen to a bunch of the poems and see a bunch of the watercolors, and then for them there's always that one particular one that hits and moves them really deeply. And then some of them have gone on to go, what is this Enneagram thing? And have looked up the Enneagram and be like, they're totally the poem and the Enneagram. I am that Enneagram. So it's been a beautiful way in that sense to help people to make connections as well.
Oh, I love that. It's not coming in from the Enneagram first, but through the you can just see yourself in it. I would love to just have you play every one of them back to back. That would be a very, very long show. So we will absolutely put all the links up. I thought about, and maybe I'll still do this, get one of them and add it into the end of the show, because I want to have music. But I also, I hate to not take advantage of having the opportunity of asking you, will you just read one of them?
Yeah.
One of the
I'd love to. Do you want me to read your one? Should I read 7 for you?
Oh, you know what? I think how selfish of me. Oh, why not? I will tell you. I sent the number type 2 to my mom, who's a 2.
Yeah.
And she just melted. You feel,
I do like type 2. Maybe I should read type 2 for your listeners. Do you have
2? And then we'll put links to everything. I hope everybody.
And you could play type 7 at the end. That's a good idea.
That's what
That works well. All right, let me find.
And y'all, you have to go to his website while he's looking up type 2, which obviously we didn't plan for him to do that.
That's okay. I've got it here.
The artwork that goes along with this, I'm going to tell you, at first I was like, well, I don't want to be that animal.
Because the seven is a Highland cow. Oh, sorry. You can go and check it out.
When I listen to the song and reading it, I say song. It's a, what do you call it?
It's a poem. It's a spoken word, and we actually call them poems and songs together. So we call them pongs, but that's not a very nice name. So really, it's just spoken word music is what
Spoken
I'd call
word,
it.
it's got music with it.
Yeah.
And so when I listened to it and looked at the drawing or
Yeah.
the art,
The
I guess that was
painting.
a painting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I loved it. I loved the
Yeah.
animal, and you just brought it such to life. So
That's wonderful.
please,
That's so good.
everybody, go look at the imagery of each type. But I would just love, if you're listening, as if you'll check out your type and listen at the same time and reflect on the animal and
Yeah.
how you connect, why you chose those animals. So
Yeah, and I'm also bringing them up on my they're coming out on my Spotify over the year as well. So if people want to share them through streaming services, they can do that as well, which is good.
well, I was wondering, are you going to put them on any of the other streaming services?
Yeah, they're on iTunes and all the streaming services.
Ah,
Yeah.
there we go. That's
Yeah.
okay. There we go. Okay, so Joel McKerrow, please read type 2 and bless
I
it.
will. This one is called Heavy, and I'll tell you what the picture of this one is because it'll make a little bit more sense in the poem. It's a picture of a deer with huge antlers, and the antlers are holding a nest with eggs within it. This is a poem. There is a time when those who hold up the world can no longer do so. Strong arms and a straight spine for too long and too many and too much. And I know you would carry them all if you could, every single one. You would let them come find safety in the nest of your life, pile them high. But do you realize how heavy it has all become? How even small things held up by eager hands start to weigh down tired arms, a back now curved, bent over, bent down. Do you realize how sacrifice can so easily turn savior, turn martyr? How what began as generosity and self-effacement may be laden down now with expectation to be seen, acknowledged, made worthy. What you perceive others' needs to be defines your own reality. So you turn to catch them and you turn to help them, turn to hold them. You turn and you turn and you turn until you have lost yourself, forgotten yourself, given of yourself until you are so small, or at least subservient, at least less, at least insignificant to give and to give and to give until there is nothing left to give to yourself. And still the weight presses down, pushes you down into the ground, through the ground now covered over, and the world goes dark. But it is okay, friend. Wait there in the soil, alone. Wait there where you cannot help them. You do not have to hold it all together for everybody else. They will be okay without you. And you will be okay without them needing you. You are enough without them. You are worthy without them. So wait, for the seed of something growing can only germinate in the soil of your aloneness, in the dark and the lonely, when it's just you. Wait there, not having to serve anybody, right there where you might just be cracked open and growing and stretching out toward the light. Limbs that are reaching and grasping and breaking through surface, strong like antler, tree like bone, to grow and to grow. Deep roots remain, as deep as the pain and the broken has ever been. They need to be, for you shall grow tall here, friend, planted, whole and holding on to the earth, and they shall come. The ones your heart beats for, they shall rest in antler nest, held up by your giving. But this time, you do not need them to. You do not need them to. This time, this dear, she is not holding up the world anymore. The world holds up her. A depth of self-assurity. You are planted, deep roots, stretching branches, antler and free. The self that is worthy of love, just for being you, just you. This is enough, just you. This is always enough. For the wonderful twos in our midst.
I love my twos. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I am so grateful our paths have crossed.
Absolutely.
I am going to end it here because I can't think of it.
It feels like an appropriate place, doesn't it?
It feels so beautiful. I will reach out to you later because I would love for us to keep connected and maybe have you back on.
Yeah, I would love to.
And go a little further in this exploration. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with us and your gift.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing your light with those who really are just in the blooming stages. Thank you for cutting short maybe a lot of pain in
hopefully
people's lives. So thank you.
Hopefully.
Friends, thank you for joining us on this podcast today. I hope we all find that light in our own lives and love who we are just as we are.
We are learning how to exhale.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Slow down. Breathe out.
Always.
Slowly, be still. Be present. It doesn't come easy. So how can we sit still when life is so full? When it's so brimming over with promise and invitation? Something new around the corner and everything is the call to adventure. To taste and to feel, to race, wind through hair, fireworks in the sky, this celebration, this party life, this pace, full lungs, hoist the sails, ride the waves, itchy feet, always horizon, always chasing, to not miss out on the next thing, and the next thing, and then we are learning how to exhale. Slow down, breathe out, slowly, be still. Present. It does not come easy. To remember there is an anchor for such a time as this. To remember there is a mooring and a safe harbour. And it is okay to let the world pass you by for a time. To sit and be all bovine and free. Have you met my friend Highland Pete? He can amble like the best of them, dawdle like the rest of them. What I am saying is, do not run so fast that you leave yourself behind. Every ship has to find berth, lower the sails, to check the hull, to look inside, for it is the underbelly of the broken boat that matters most. And hasn't the world leaked too fast into these, our wooden boat souls? So chase the wind, of course, chase the wind. Remember the reason, pull out the maps, the compass. Do not let your wandering be a wayward thrust into nothing of value. Know that your direction is sure. Around the corner is indeed another adventure. You beautiful boat, you broken vessel, you holy ship, you sacred sailor. The tides will rise and the wind will come and the sails be full once more. But for now, just be bovine and free. Just amble and dawdle and chase the wind out of this reality. It doesn't come easy, but we are learning how to exhale. Slow down. Breathe out. Slowly. Be still. Chew the grass. Be so slow. Just for a time.